Well, first, thank you for those kind words. We didn't have a tree out back with money on it, and my dad reminded me of that every chance he got. And I knew as a little girl that I was going to be rich. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but I knew it. Well, if you tell yourself something long enough, you'll believe it. And we already discovered that there's a lie in belief. And so most of us are walking around with lies, money beliefs that are lies that are keeping us from the power to call everything under our authority, including money. If we're counting the last 5 years, we all making millions. It was at that point in time I stopped chasing money. And I know it's gonna sound real crazy because I love to talk about money, but I don't chase it. I don't have to chase it. Money is with me right now.
There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dream Catchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome. And if you haven't ever taken notes, you have to get a pen and pad for this episode. I've got Darnyelle Jervey Harmon in with me today. I don't know if she's in Delaware, somewhere in the Caribbean. I don't know where she is, but I know that she is doing it big. She always does it big. And I always leave my interaction with Darnyelle feeling better, special, improved, empowered. And I can't say that about everybody, but in every single action, I've walked away with a new piece of knowledge. I've walked away with a different understanding of the world and the way that people are, or the way that things are. And I've always walked away feeling like I've been poured into. And it doesn't matter the scenario. It always feels like I'm the so special, like the only person that she's interacting with on that particular day. And I have no idea how she does it, but it's a superpower of hers. And I'm telling you that because as we get into this episode, you're going to see how important that is when it talks about your relationship with money and other things that you think are important for you. So, Darnyelle, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Well, first, thank you for those kind words. I appreciate them so much. Like it everything you feel is what I intend to be felt anytime I interact with anyone. So I'm so grateful that you felt it. You can see it and it does make a difference. And so I'm excited to be here. Hey y'all, I'm so excited.
Hey, y'all. So, the last time I saw Danielle in person was May of it was 2023. And I strolled up into this ballroom and I have no idea what to expect, y'all. I have no idea what to expect. It's called Move to Millions. I'm like, what are we talking about? I heard Danielle, I found her through Daniel Mangena. She was on his show. I'm like, who is this lady? And how do I get to talk to her? Because she's talking about things I haven't heard most women talk about, and especially any Black women. And he's like, bro, I'll just plug you in. I'll connect you direct. And next thing I know, I'm standing in front of Darnyelle. Well, actually, she's standing in front of me on a stage. And I'm looking and I'm like, how did she put all these people in the room? Because I've never seen somebody like her fill a room that big. The DJ is going. I mean, it almost feels like a church service. And I'm like, what is happening here? And I see people crying. I see Darnyelle telling her story. She's talking about building a seven-figure business and saying, I don't want this. Y'all can have this money. I'm going to go back to six figures because it was easier that way. And I'm like, who's being this vulnerable? Who's talking about money in this way? And then I walked out of the event transformed. I learned some things about forgiveness. I learned some things about people whispering in your ear and telling you about the things that you want to hear when you accomplish the thing. And so I can't describe it. It's something that you have to experience. But what I will say is that Darnyelle has a gift. She has an understanding of some universal laws that have allowed her to unlock a relationship with money that I've seen very few people have. And so with that is kind of our lead in, Darnyelle, and I might have been a little dramatic in the setup. And you might say, Jerome, let's bring it back down, and that's okay. How did this relationship, this dance with money start?
Mm.
Because I haven't seen that shared anywhere. And I'm getting the best interview you've ever done today.
Well, and I feel it already. Okay, so first of all, it didn't start as a dance, it started as a tussle.
Ooh.
Like I was straight fighting with money.
Come on.
So, in order to answer this question, I got to take everybody back. So, I am the product of drug addicted turned crack addicted parents born in
Ouch.
1975 in projects of Wilmington, Delaware. Was born in Southbridge projects. We moved to Riverside projects. And both of my parents, I believe that they did the best that they could with what they had. I have no idea what it is like to be controlled by a substance. And so they did the best that they could, but it was chaotic at best. And I learned very early that money was only for what you need. There was never enough of it. You had to rob Peter to pay hard after working twice as hard to get half of what you were truly deserving of, right? We didn't have a tree out back with money on it. And my dad reminded me of that every chance he got. And so when I was 13, I started working because I wanted my own money. Now, I'm financially illiterate like most Americans are. If we look at the statistics, 60% of adults live paycheck to paycheck. That's financial illiteracy, right? And we live in a country, if you're in the United States, where that's the way they prefer it. They prefer that you get caught up in the education system and you become a good old employee who works by the hour for what another company deems you to be worth, and you love it, right? And so I started working at 13 at McDonald's. My dad made me put half of every paycheck in the bank. By the time I was 16, I had about $7,500, right? I was on my way to wealth because I knew as a little girl that I was going to be rich. I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but I knew it was a knowing in my body as my 48-year-old self looks back on my 6, 7, 8-year-old self. I knew I was going to be rich. And so I started save that money by the time I was 16. One day I did not have cheerleading practice. So I got home and got the mail and I opened my bank statement and I about swallowed my tongue because instead of having 7,500 and whatever amount of dollars, I had $34.19 in my bank account that my father was the co-signer, grantor, whatever the terminology was, because I was too young to have an account on my own. And when he got home and I bum rushed him with my bank statement thinking someone had stole my money, his response was, "Oh, you thought you were living here for free." And so I learned another lesson about money that day was that money could be taken from you whenever anybody deemed, because you weren't really the purveyor of your own money.
Mm.
And so all of these lessons that I learned as a child took me to college, where I was fortunate enough to get a full scholarship. So I didn't pay anything to go to college yet. When I graduated, I had more credit card debt than the average graduate from the University of Delaware in the class of 1997. And by the time I was 30, I had $250,000 in credit card debt. And I am not proud to tell anybody this, but I thought that the way to experience the best of life is what I believe today to be the definition of either poor people or middle class people. Poor people, I believe that money is for paying bills. That's what I
Mhm.
watched my parents do, right? They got money to pay bills. There was nothing left over. That was it. We took what we could get. And middle class people, they think money is to pay their bills so that they can have good credit, so that they can extend their living and live beyond their means because they have good credit, right? And so that's what I thought. So I was living my best life with, interestingly, Jerome, I did not have a whole bunch of name brand. I didn't have Gucci. I wasn't driving a Bentley. I wasn't, wearing Prada. Like, I literally was paying my friends' electric bills on my credit card because I thought that that's the way that you show people that you love them, is you buy them things, right? So by the time I was 35, I couldn't keep up robbing Peter to pay Paul anymore. The bottom fell out, and I was in a precarious situation where the only thing I could do was file bankruptcy. And begrudgingly, humiliated and embarrassed, I did. But it was also a defining moment that changed my tussle with money into a dance with money, because the bankruptcy trustee required that I take a financial literacy course. He
Okay.
said, and I quote, I've been on a lot of interviews lately and I haven't shared this, but the bankruptcy trustee said, and I quote, "I have never met a woman that's 35 years old that has amassed $250,000 in credit cards So he required that in order for my bankruptcy to be discharged, that I take a financial literacy course. In that course, I literally watched my life change. We had two texts. One was like a financial something or other. I can't even remember the name of it. But the other book that was required reading was A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Cameron Jacondi. And instantly I watched my life change. I watched that tussle turn into the most beautiful dance. And within 3 years, I was a millionaire. Within 5 years, I was a multi-millionaire. And today I'm worth 8 figures. And I talk about money as much as I talk about money because unless we normalize it, universally money flows away from those who feel there is a shortage of it.
Whoa,
And
say it
so
again. Say it again. Say it
yeah,
again. Say it again.
money flows away from those who feel there is a shortage of it. So when you say things like, I can't afford it, it's expensive, that's not in my budget, what you are telling money is that it is not welcome in your life experience. And so it moves in the other direction. Money has to move. It's always moving. It never stops moving. That's how right now some athlete has gotten a contract for $285 million and there's someone else sleeping on the street right now because money is always moving, and it moves to those who believes that it is in abundance. It's superfluous. It never runs out. So unless you learn how to dance, I love this analogy, this allegory. It's going to be my new thing. Unless you learn how to dance with money by being in the most amazing relationship with it, it will flow away from you. Most people it's a thin line between love and hate relationship with money instead of an it's on and popping relationship. And my mission is to get entrepreneurs and small business owners to get their money on and popping so they can make the move to millions without hustling and grinding and experience the grace and ease for which God intended money to be used in the atmosphere.
Are y'all getting this? Are y'all getting this? I got goosebumps. I got goosebumps already. Okay. You said without hustle and grind. What do you mean that we can have money without hustle and grind?
It's a whole thing. So here's the thing, right? So for those of us who are in the United States, and I know your podcast has reach, so some people in other countries may have different philosophies, right? But we in the United States, it has been ingrained in us that you work hard in order to experience money. When I travel to other countries and I see like businesses they don't even work 9 to 5 in other countries. They work like 10 to 2 or 10 to 3 because they don't work to live. They live to work, or the opposite, whatever way, right? Like working is not everything to them. Yeah. But in the United States, that's what we've been taught. Our forefathers led us to believe that you have to work hard in order to produce money. But the fact of the matter is, hard work just makes you tired. In order to produce money, you need to get in alignment with it. You need to have a relationship, because money is in a relationship with you. Mm-hmm. And based on the way you are treating money, that's going to determine how it flows into your life experience. And so not only does money need a purpose to come in, but you get to choose how you want money to show up for you based on your relationship. Think about the person you love the most. You're attentive, you call them, you text them, you engage in conversation with them, and you spend time with them in a way that lets them know that they are special, that they matter. What would happen if you did that with money? And I'm going to say this now because I can just feel it in the spirit. Someone is wanting to quote to me, "For the love of money is the root of all evil," from First Timothy chapter 6. And here's the thing. The scripture does say that, but what we all have to realize is that the Bible was written in 3 languages and none of them were English. So many of the things that we read in the Bible and we take as law in English were translated loosely from another language. So the phrase "for the love of money" in Greek is the word avarice. If you were to go to your dictionary right now or dictionary.com and look up avarice, it's going to tell you that it means extreme greed. So what the scripture is really saying is extreme greed is the root of all evil. And I wouldn't disagree with that. In that text, just to give you a little bit of background and context, Paul is talking to Timothy. Timothy is a new leader in the church, and his territory is filled with wealthy people. So Paul is preparing Timothy for how to relate to these people who have money and how to guide them so that they get to experience everything that God desires for them. In verse 17 of that same chapter, Paul gives Timothy the 3 commands that he is to deliver to wealthy people, because there is nothing wrong with being wealthy. The Bible talks about money 2,300 times. More than God talks about heaven or hell, he talks about money, wealth, and possessions, because you are supposed to experience it. So in First Timothy chapter 6, verse 17, Paul says this: when you encounter a rich person, tell them these 3 things. Number 1, don't be arrogant or high-minded. Number 2, do good deeds. And number 3, remember the source of their wealth. So if you ain't boastful and mean and cantankerous, if you actually use your wealth for the good of other people, and you remember that it is the Lord your God that gave you the wealth in the first place, you can be as rich as you want to be.
Ooh.
As you want to be. No holds barred, no conditions, because God desires wealth. I mean, my favorite parable is the parable of the talents, because I think it is a direct correlation to how we show up and see money, right? And so if you don't know the story, I'm going to tell you the story in entrepreneurial speak. So I'm a CEO and I'm going on a long trip. And as I leave, I have 3 key team members that I'm going to entrust the wealth of my company to. To one team member, I'm going to leave $5 million. And it's theirs to manage. To a second team member, I'm going to leave $3 million. It's theirs to manage. To a third team member, I'm going to leave $1 million. I choose the amount I'm leaving to the team members based on what I know about who they are and how they show up for our company. So when I get back from my long trip, I'm excited to check in with my team members. Team member number 1 has taken that $5 million and turned it into 10 million. They have used what I have taught them, and they have made the money move and multiply. I'm excited. So I praise and reward team member number 2. Team member number 2 has turned that $3 million into $6 million. Oh my goodness. They're so excited. And so am I, because I was a true CEO who got to be away from my company, and my company was still making money. Employee number 3, a little fearful and afraid of what might happen if they lost my money. Instead of actually making my money move, they buried my money into a checking account that did not bear any interest. And I get back to the same $1 million that I left them. Here's what I want you to know about money. Money was made to move and multiply. And rich people, wealthy people know that you use money to create more money. That's what the first 2 employees did. The third employee, because the way you see money is really about the way you see yourself, because she or he didn't see themselves as worthy of being a steward over $1 million, buried the money. The third employee was fired, humiliated, and ostracized, and banned from the company. How many of you right now, because the way you see yourself is not worthy to experience millions of dollars in your business, don't have $1 million business, which is the floor, not the ceiling, and instead are constantly regurgitating that money that you buried, and it's not changing? Every year you set a goal, and every year you land in the same place. Well, the way that we change it is by changing the way we see ourselves, because if we see ourselves differently, we'll see money differently, because money is just an energy that is an amplification of who we believe ourselves to be.
Money is an amplification of who we see ourselves to be.
Who we believe ourselves to be.
Who we believe ourselves to be.
Yeah. And there's a lie right in the middle of the word believe, right? So most of the things we believe are a lie. And it's messing with your money, but it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, but you're going to have to unlearn everything you've learned by retracing your steps and putting yourself in position to actually radically dismantle the blocks and beliefs that are keeping your millions from flowing to you.
All right. So y'all can see she's a scholar. I didn't put the doctor on it in the beginning of this interview. This is Dr. Darnyelle we're listening to, ladies and gentlemen. So, all right. I got this book because you said I need this book. So I got this book here, right? The Happy Pocket Full of Money. You said I needed that book. And then there's another book I got right here. I keep a whole box. I got a whole box right here. I got a whole box right here. Let me. Oh, mine's a sign though. I got purple writing in mine.
That is the winner right there.
I got this Move to Millions book. And it's a proven framework to become $1 million CEO with grace and ease instead of hustle and grind. And so I'm just listening to what you're sharing with us today. And I'm thinking about some of the stuff I heard you share from stage. And you talk about hitting that same goal and going back. And when I was setting this up, I mentioned that you built the 7-figure business. And you said, oh, this is hustle and grind. I don't want this. And y'all can have it back. And so, were there some lies that you believed that got you to that space? And then what was your process of going backwards to go forward? Because you slipped it in and you just moved quickly from it. He's like, no, I'm
Yeah.
worth 8 figures now.
Yeah.
That
So
means it's 10 million or more, y'all.
yeah. So the biggest lie that I told myself was that when I hit the $1 million mark, all of a sudden, the sea would part, the skies would open, the bushes would burn, and someone would ride into town on a donkey for my believers in the house. Right. So that's what I told myself. I told myself that I would be validated when I made the money. But what I realized is that every insecurity that I had, everything that I didn't know about money, everything that I believed to be true about money was just amplified. And I didn't like it. It was it was a circus. It was not what I believe that I should experience, and the only way to get rid of it was to kill it, to be willing to walk away. That's what I call detachment, right? Or surrender. I had to be willing to walk away from the money, and the Bible says it this way, right? Or at least this is my interpretation of how it's said in the Bible is your willingness to lose it all is how you gain it all. What
Ooh.
profit a man if he lose his soul in the process? And so I had profited and I had lost my soul. And I wasn't willing to keep that going because there's more to life than having money. And let's also be clear, right? Most people who have $1 million business, I mean, first of all, your business is a pass-through entity. So it doesn't make you a millionaire and it doesn't necessarily make you wealthy. If you make $1 million, but you spend 1 million or you spend 1.2 million, you're actually at a loss, right? And so my business initially, I was overspending. I was not stewarding the resource in a way that would allow me to scale it and sustain it while also building wealth for myself. And so I was willing to kill the monster. I was working way too much. I was living out of a suitcase. I kept an ear infection from all of the altitude changes, from all the flights I was taking, for all the stages I was standing on. In a lot of ways, I'm sure there are people listening now that are like, I would just love that. Like, I would love to be the person who's out in the world. Maybe, maybe not, but I didn't love it. I was also single at the time and I had a true desire to be married. And I knew that the likelihood that I was going to get and keep a man when I was always 2 shades to the wind, not drunk, but like on a plane, it probably wasn't going to happen. And so I had to decide what was more important, right? And for me, the lifestyle, I didn't at the time, I didn't believe I could have it all. I believe I had to choose. But during the detachment and to the stepping away from millions to recalibrate to get back to millions, I changed my beliefs and I started to believe that I could have it all, that I was going to have to be willing to do some things different in order to be able to have it all. And I changed everything. I changed my work ethic. I changed how I worked. I raised my prices. Like I recognized the significance of who I am and what that means to the world and started to operate from that space. And in doing that, I got back to the $1 million mark. So 2016 was my last multiple 7-figure year for 3 years. 2019, we came back to the $1 million mark and we've gone up each year since then. And from 17, 18, and part of 19, what I was doing is I was rebuilding my company in the way that I knew it could work for me to have a business that not only made millions, but also served me both financially and spiritually. I had to be willing to become a leader. I had to be willing to deal with the things about me that aren't amazing, right? I'm not going to sit here and act like my stuff doesn't stink because it does, right? And I had to be willing to do all of that. And so in really humbling myself, and my definition of humility is operating in the full confidence of who God created you to be, while recognizing that you are not the end all be all of any one thing. And so I humbled myself to get the support that I needed in order to become the version of myself that I believe could get to 8 figures net wealth, right? And growing. Like, we're not necessarily stopping there, but we are at around 12 million right now, in case anybody felt like they needed to know exactly what I meant there. So, and for me, it's been just about embodying and being in alignment to that at all times. At all times.
So that's the second time the word alignment has been said today.
Mm-hmm.
And you man, there's two places I want to go. Let's talk about alignment because we haven't defined that. And I mean, you went into etymology and told me what love was and all this stuff already. So let's talk about alignment, what that means and why it's so significant, because that word is an intentional choice in your
Yeah.
track.
I believe that the definition of alignment is seeing yourself the way that God sees you. And so when I think about Jeremiah 1:5, it's a very often quoted scripture. Before you were formed in your mother's womb, God knew and approved you. That means we came here validated. We came here fully equipped with all of the abundance that we need in order to serve in the purpose that is for our life, right? If I go back to Genesis 1:26, God says, let us make man in our image and likeness. That means that each of us was created in the image and likeness of God, which makes us a little g God of the earth to God's big G godness of the universe. That means that we have the power and authority to call everything under our command. That's what the word subdue means in that scripture, that everything falls underneath of us. That's who we are. So if I were to actually see myself the way that God has always seen me, man, I'm in alignment. So how to know if you're in alignment? Make an I am statement. And if you change I am to God is and it no longer makes sense, you're out of alignment. Here's an example. I am broke, because some of y'all say that on the regular, and then change that to God is broke. That don't make no type of sense. How God gonna be broke? And if God is not, because if I am that I am, and you're created in his image and his likeness, that means you are that you are. And if you and him in the same sentence no longer, if there is not a direct connection, there's a misalignment. So that's the fastest checkpoint to know if you are in alignment, right? And many of us make what I call casual covenants, right? We speak amiss. We speak things that are contrary to who we were truly called to be, and we call it fact. Well, if you tell yourself something long enough, you'll believe it. And we already discovered that there's a lie in belief. And so most of us are walking around with lies, money beliefs that are lies that are keeping us from the power to call everything under our authority, including money.
Hey guys, as you might know, a very small percentage of the people who actually listen to this podcast are subscribers. So do us a favor, subscribe. In fact, we did some analytics and we found out that only 25% of the people who listen are subscribers. And our goal is to get that to about 75% over the next 3 months. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button so you get notified when our new episodes come. We plan to bring immense value to you guys going forward as we continue to improve the content that we create at Dreamcast. Your dream should be real. To call it
Under our authority. Money does what we tell it to, if we recognize that we have the power to make it move the way we want it to move. It's just an energy.
It does what we tell it to do.
It does what we tell it to. If I say, okay, I desire 100K right now, and I want to use that, or I will use that 100K to do this, this, and this, and this. Yes. I've given money purpose. I've told it where I want it to go. And if I detach from how that 100K shows up for me in full belief and holding the vibration that it is in fact coming, it will show up and appropriate where I said it should go.
Now you dropped in the word vibration. Now we getting woo woo. Come on.
Well, I don't think it's woo woo. I mean, I think it is an understanding of how God and his abundant universe works. Now
Okay.
I know why we call it woo-woo. I know why believers get their panties in a bunch, and I know why new age people leverage it. The Bible even says any man who. It doesn't say Jews and Gentiles. It says any man who.
Yeah.
So that's why the Bob Proctors of the world, may he rest in peace, can use the principles that are in the word, that are in the Bible, and experience what God said you would get if you work the principle. God is principled. And if you work his principles, you'll get the award of the principle.
Yeah.
But sometimes religious people will get so hell bent on, yep, I said religious people are hell bent.
Here we
They
go.
will get so hell bent on the rituals that they will forget the principles. And that is why this has probably been my biggest gripe. And listen, I love Jesus and I'm unapologetic about my faith. This has always been my biggest gripe of Christianity. Christianity, first and foremost, is rooted in Catholicism. And if you know anything about the Catholic faith, then they believe that being poor makes you holy.
No, ma'am.
And not that the Bible says being poor makes you holy, but that's the practice of Catholicism. That's religion. Religion takes and extrapolates things from the Bible and puts them in a format that creates an environment for people to operate in a way that can be controlled.
Here we go.
And so I don't think it's woo-woo. I think that it is the principles. And I do know that there's a fine line between, sorcery and astronomy and all of those things. There's a fine line. And the thing that we have to remember is that God created all of these things
All of
and
them.
then man tainted them.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I say what I said earlier, money is just an amplification of who you really are. And if you are the type of person who will take a principle and twist it to your benefit instead of leveraging it the way that it was intended to be used, then not only is that your business, but that is also the reason why you are not experiencing the reward that accompanies the principle as it was established.
You're not experiencing the reward of the principle that's established.
Correct.
Man. All right. So there's people out there and they're like, ooh, I don't want anybody to know my money not where it's supposed to be. I'm touting how I'm a 7, 8 figure entrepreneur.
Because
That
they're
mean I gotta have
cumulative. They're accumulating. They're saying, for as long as I've been in the marketplace, I've made millions of dollars. So I'm a seven. I mean, literally, I have had people say that to me. They're like, well, if you
that's
count the
not
last
real.
5 years, I've made if we're counting the last 5 years, we all making millions. Like, I'm sorry. I
The clock
apologize for
starts
cutting you
over.
off.
Well, no, don't be sorry, right? Because the internet has made it easy for people to fool other people, and then
Correct.
people are comparing themselves against the folks who are fooling them. You talked about astronomy and some of the other stuff. There's charlatans out there
There are charlatans right
who
now
are
on your Facebook timeline. You
right
scrolling on
now
Instagram and seeing them right now. Yes.
ads. They're running ads. I mean, there's just so many folks out there. And one of the reasons why I wanted you on is because I know you're real. And I've flown around the world looking for the real ones, the ones who are actually living it out and not just putting on a performance. Now, I mean, yeah, you have to be entertaining if you're going to captivate people for multiple days in a
Yeah.
ballroom, but entertaining is not acting. And I
Correct.
don't think people actually understand that. And so, you want to check some receipts every now and again with the folks that you're going to. And you said a word. I struggle with it because I don't know that I want to be humble, because when I look up the definition, it doesn't feel good to me. But what I do know is that I don't have to make all the mistakes myself, and that I can learn from other people, and that I can be in the position to learn from other people. And you said that the trustee made you go to a financial literacy course, and you got a book, and you read the book, and life started changing. Then you built the business, and then you took the business back. And then you said you spent a period I call it going in the cave. You spent the period rebuilding the business so that it could serve you in three
Mhm.
different ways. I'm gonna get to the spiritual part later because we already started
We
dancing
done
on
been there.
spiritual and religion.
Mhm.
We'll get to that in a minute. But what who were your teachers? Like what did you learn in that period, and how did you discern who could sow into this new fertile ground that was producing harvest?
Mhm.
So it wasn't just like you could take anything at that point because the
Right.
ground was so fertile, whatever was put in was going to grow. So how did you discern? Because I think those folks who are on the edge, they're like, oh, I, I know things are happening. I know I need some help. I'm scared to share this with just anybody because the
Mhm.
facade is what people are attracted to. At least that's what they
Yeah.
think. How'd you discern that? Because maybe that'll help some people who are questioning what to do next.
Yeah, that was that. So from 17 to 19 was the only period in my business where I was not working with coaches and mentors.
Mm,
It was me and it was God and it was a lot of books. Like it was really introspective time. It was a time for doing the internal work, not pouring more in. Because what you always have to keep in mind that when you work with coaches and mentors is they are often sharing what they know to be true and what worked for them. There are very few mentors that can offer you an approach that is not cookie cutter,
mm,
meaning everybody's not doing the same exact thing. That's part of the reason why people niche, right? So they're like, oh, I'm only going to work with coaches because I'm a coach who's figured out how to do 1, 2, and 3. And if I teach everybody else how to do the same thing, they'll get my same result. I happen to be one of those coaches where it doesn't matter what kind of business you have, the principles to grow a business, you can grow it. And that's because I know business. I have an MBA. I was a vice president of Fortune 500. I was a top Mary Kay Pink Cadillac sales director, and I ran a women's business center. So I know business. There's nothing around business that you could present to me that could stump me, but very few people are that way. And so for me, I was really stewarding and honing what I had already learned, and through direct relationship and connection with the Father, we together were creating the plan. It was at that point in time I stopped chasing money. And I know it's going to sound real crazy because I love to talk about money, but I don't chase it. I don't have to chase it. Money is with me right now. And so when you understand your ability to make money move, you don't have to chase it. But it was during that time where I was being poured in to raise up into the anointing on my life in order to be able to, in a lot of ways, and there have been people who called me a Moses of sorts, right?
mm,
Taking people out of their financial um, Israel and putting them into the land that flow with milk and honey.
yeah.
And during that time, I couldn't have voices that may be counterproductive and counterintuitive to what God was telling me enter in, right? And so I think for any season during and the season may be long, it may be short, a fast. So I fasted from coaching and mentorship during that season. Once I came out of it and I was clear, I did go back because I do believe, and that was also a period in time where I took very few clients myself. I do believe that if you are to be considered a coach, consultant, mentor, someone should be guiding you, right? It's hard to read the
Mm,
label from inside your jar. And so
mhm,
once I decided to come back into mainstream and regrow the business and all of those things, I went back into seeking outside counsel. The Bible calls it a multitude of advisors, right? And but during that specific period, it was introspective. It was time for me to just really hone and solidify what I knew to be true for me without anybody else's interpretation. Because anytime you talk to anyone and you tell them what you're thinking, they're going
mhm,
to take whatever you told them and they're going to remix it. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes they make it worse or more chaotic, or they add steps that didn't need to be added. But they're always going to give their opinion because we think as a collective that if you talk to us about something you're doing, you want our opinion. And it was a period of time where the only opinion that mattered was that of God. And it was also when I turned my company over to him, he became the CEO of Incredible One Enterprises, and I became the acting partner, the steward of it. And so I knew what I needed to do in order to operate in obedience. Like right now I've been reading in Deuteronomy, and today I was in Deuteronomy 28. If you know the Bible, Deuteronomy 28 is it's an anomaly of a chapter. So the first part of the chapter are the blessings from the Lord,
Yeah.
right, for being obedient. And then the second part of the chapter are the curses for being disobedient.
Ouch.
You get a lot more has the potential to happen to you if you don't do what God says than if you do what God says, right? So it's just amazing. And similarly, right, I talk a lot about what I call the softer side of entrepreneurship. There's a whole section on it in the book: obedience, alignment, surrender, forgiveness, right? Those things are, I think, more important than your strategy. And sometimes the only strategy is to do what you know to do, and as a result of that, take the actions that need to be taken, and not focused on extreme effort, but focused on extreme embodiment, actually being, right?
We do have. So
Yes.
you made a switch. You didn't say I believe to be true. You said what I knew to be true.
Mm-hmm.
That's important.
Mm-hmm.
How did you
It's
know?
important.
How did you know versus believing?
So, as we've talked about before, there's a lie in belief. So, at some point in time, the things that you believe become things that you know based on your level of conviction, based on the evidence that's presented for that thing. So, for instance, I wouldn't say, and I know as Christians, we call ourselves believers, right? I don't believe there is a God. I know there is one because of the things that I have witnessed and experienced in my life. So because I know that many of the things that we believe are they're hand-me-downs, they're things that we were taught or caught as we were being raised that we don't even know, right? I tell this story all the time about the girl watching her mom make a ham. Mom cleans the ham, cuts the butt off the ham, puts it in a pan, puts it in the oven. Little girl's inquisitive and say, "Hey, mom, why did you cut the butt off the ham?" She said, "Actually, I don't know. Ask your grandma, because that's how she did it." Little girl calls grandma. "Hey, grandma, mom's making a ham. She cleaned the ham, cut the butt off the ham, put the ham in the pan, put it in the oven. Why'd she cut the butt off?" Mom says, or grandmom says, "Hey, I don't know why your mom did it. But back in the day, I did it because my pan wasn't big enough to hold the butt and the rest of the ham." So how many things are we doing because we watched it done and we never asked why it was being done? And it's become a belief. A
Mm-hmm.
belief that we're regurgitating, a belief that
Mm-hmm.
isn't serving us, a belief that's keeping us stuck on the hamster wheel of whatever area of our life isn't moving, although part of us believes and or knows that it should. And so at some point in time, you have to try your beliefs against the knowledge of truth to validate the evidence of the belief, to turn that belief into a knowing. Because once it becomes a knowing, there's a confidence that accompanies the competence that allows you to show up fully in that thing.
Y'all better rewind those last 15 seconds. She just gave you the step by step to get to the place where you get the exact outcome you're looking for. She just gave it to you step by step.
It doesn't have to be hard, it just has to be principled.
Ooh. Mm. I don't think most people understand their principles or their values.
And it's likely I believe that to be true. And it's likely because they don't really have a center. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people who are still religious. They're following the order of the service, right? They're starting with the Lord's Prayer, and then they're moving into Psalm 182, and then they're doing Psalm 353, and then the person comes up and does the announcements. And after the pastor takes the pulpit, it's the appropriate time for them to stand up and clap their hands and turn around because they got the Holy Spirit. That's religion. We are in a day and time where we need relationship. And relationship means that you don't have to do everything right in order to still get the reward of having that obedient center. It's an entirely different dynamic, right? And to think about, for those of you who have children, I do not. So this analogy, I'm going to do the best that I can with what I know about people who have kids. But think about your own children, right? You give your child an assignment. They do not do what you told them to do. They get to the same result, but they do it in a way that serves them. How does that make you feel?
Yeah.
Does
Awful.
it make you feel excited? Does it make you feel like they disobeyed you?
Yeah.
Right? Those distinctions are the difference for me between religion and relationship. You don't love that child any less. They still arrived at the same point, but you also and you recognize their humanity.
Hmm.
The whole reason Jesus was sent here is because God knew we was gonna jack it up. He knew it because in the Old Testament, jack up after I mean, how many people did he have to? How many times did he have to completely destroy the earth? It wasn't once. You know what I mean? Like so it's the same thing. And I think that relationship also makes it permissible for you to be a human,
Hmm.
right? And religion makes it really really hard, and that's why a lot of people are stressed by religion and they're not experiencing the kairos of God. They're not getting the fullness of God because all of they know are the rituals that may not even be pertinent to what you need to do at this day and age based on the coming and the deliverance of Jesus. I'm just saying.
Okay. We're gonna burn them up if we keep going. Um, you got Move to Millions coming up in
Mm-hmm.
May, right?
Yep.
It's different than it was last year.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be very different. This year, we are going to radically dismantle the money blocks and beliefs that are keeping you from your millions flowing into your life experience. We've talked about it in years past, a piece here, a piece there, but I'm really committed to dedicating the agenda to doing the work that is going to to allow the attendees to create the capacity for millions. So here's what I know. I know that most people need to raise their tolerance level. A few years ago, God hit me with this that I still refer to and think even in my own journey. I will let them live on whatever level they settle for.
God said that.
God said that to me. I was driving in my car down the road adjacent to my home, and out of nowhere, I didn't have the music on. Sometimes I just ride in the car and just create space. And out of nowhere, I heard, just like you're speaking to me right now, I will let them live on whatever level they settle for. And I had to pull my car over because first I had to make sure I heard God correctly. I'm like, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? And he repeated it. And I said, who are we talking about? You are called to entrepreneurs. So I'm talking about entrepreneurs. And I was like, wow. So if we can live on whatever level we settle for, why would we settle for any level except for the next one? But how many of us are settling, right? And so, because I know that to be the case this year, I really want to dedicate experientially the agenda to doing the work in the room that is going to create space for you to raise your tolerance level. Because some of y'all aren't making the money you want because of how you tolerate money. You've told yourself that $1 million business is a lot of money. And again, money flows away from those who believe that there's a shortage of it. If you believe it's a lot of money, you won't ever earn it. So
Mm.
until you normalize millions, millions will elude you. And so I want to create a safe space, a container where you'll be able to normalize millions coming in, and that they will begin to flow while we're together, because I'm creating space in the agenda for us to work through several experiential moments that are going to all culminate into me releasing a 7-generation anointing on the room. God told me at the top of the year, I always go into an intense study, hence why I'm reading Deuteronomy. And God told me at the top of the year that it was time for Rockefeller level of wealth. Well, if you know anything about the Rockefellers, for 800 years, their wealth is established. And that's if no Rockefeller does anything differently to make any more money, they already have enough money for 800 years of Rockefellers. That's the kind of money I want. Right? So what does that look like, and how do we become keepers of our generational trajectory? Most entrepreneurs I know are the first. They're the first to really start a business. They're the first to get to six figures in their business. Those who have made it to seven figures, they're the first to make seven figures. They're the first millionaire in their family. I believe that you might be the first, but you won't be the last. And in May, I'm going to solidify that in the room. And what I'm telling everybody, if you have a problem with money, if you don't have all the money you desire right now in your life experience and you can't go call it in, then you need to be in the room. Like Olita Adams said, Jerome, I don't care how you get here, but you need to get here if you can. Take a train, take a bus, get a moped, like whatever you need to do. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a person who came to my event. Her name was Turdon. She came to my event, a previous event. It was called Unleash Your Incredible Factor. She took a Greyhound bus with her last dollars to come to that event. What she learned at that event made her six figures, and we celebrate her crossing the $1 million mark in 2021. Because she learned how to create capacity. Because it's a capacity issue. It's not a skill set issue. It's not a strategy issue. It's not enough people don't know about you issue. It's a capacity issue. And so if you can increase your capacity for money, then more money could flow in.
Wait. So you're telling me the container's not big enough? What do you
Correct.
mean it's a capacity issue?
I mean, your container's not big enough. You have placed a limit on what you believe is a lot of money. And that's why it can't come in. So here's what I'm going to suggest that everybody do. And I'm going to suggest this because I can't give it all to you in this conversation, right? I'm going to suggest on March the 20th, I'm hosting the Make Millions Move Summit. It's free to attend, although I recommend you upgrade to VIP. But it's free to attend. And in this summit, I'm going to introduce you to, it's going to be an amazing preview of what is to come at Move to Millions in May. And I'm going to introduce you to some of the concepts that Jerome and I have started to talk about in this conversation so that you can understand what is at play for you to raise your tolerance level to bring millions into your business. So for 3 years, so I started my business in 2007. We failed miserably. I filed bankruptcy. I went back to work. Committed to a 2-year contract at the job. I came back into the business full-time January 1st, 2011. So I'm 13 years full-time in the business. From that first day in 2011, 2012, 2013, every year I set a goal that I was going to cross the $1 million mark because I knew I had a $1 million business in me. Every year I didn't. I got closer, but I did not cross the $1 million mark. What I realized in early 2014, which is, or early 2014, not 2014, early 2014, which is why I crossed the $1 million mark that year, is I didn't really believe subconsciously that I could do $1 million. And to me, $1 million was like a pipe dream. And so I had to raise my tolerance level and I had to create capacity in order for the $1 million to come in. And I'm going to show you some of the things you'll have to do in order to create capacity for the millions to come in. Because again, it's not a skills problem. It's not a strategy problem. It's not a visibility problem. It's not even I don't have enough team members problem. It's a capacity problem.
Capacity problem.
It's a capacity problem.
Holy smokes, y'all. All right. So how do we get registered for the half day?
So go to movetomillionsmasterclass.com, movetomillionsmasterclass.com, or you can just go to Move to Millions. If you go to Move to Millions, that's a digest page. Everything we can do to help you make the move to millions is right there. So you can click on the link that says masterclass. That'll take you to the page. Or if you're ready, you can go ahead and click on the link for event and secure your seat for Move to Millions in May.
All right, y'all. Your hand might be hurting from scribbling this stuff down. I mean, there's quotables everywhere. But this capacity thing is something that I think so many people miss. The funny part about this conversation is the first thing you did when you came on was you gave me a compliment on my hair. I was sitting in the salon on Monday getting my hair done, and you might know this, but like one of my goals is a Lamborghini Aventador.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking at Lamborghini Aventadors while she was finishing my style. And I came across one that was $3 million. And I was like, the payment for this car is only $50,000 or $45,000 a month. And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, you can't put only in front of 45,000 a month. And I was like, no, you don't understand. It's
Have
only
to.
$45,000 a month. And then I found one that was 2 million. I was like, okay, well, this one is only 25,000 a month. And
Mm-hmm.
then I kept going down. And then I was like, well, let me trade. And it's like, well, maybe an SUV is more practical. So let me go look at the Lamborghini yours. And then it was like, oh, well, this is only 5,000 a month. And then this one is only $3,500 a month. And then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, doesn't that feel doable now?
Mm-hmm. And what did she
Eh,
say?
She said, yeah. It feels way different, right? And
Yeah,
so
because only is how you create capacity.
only is how you create capacity. And it's my business only does $1 million a year. My net worth is only $1 million. And when you start
Right.
saying only, you normalize it.
Yeah.
If you don't talk about it, then there's always some inherent fear, some shame, some questioning and consideration on whether
Yeah.
the thing is. And so the other thing that I've learned in my travels is that if you can touch it, you can have it. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's
Possession is 9/10 of the law. Right.
not possession is 9/10 of the law. And so if you can get around somebody who is giving you
Mm-hmm.
principles,
Mm-hmm.
they're not giving their beliefs, they're giving you the things they know, they're giving you Darnyelle's patient zero for everything that she teaches. She's experimented herself, seen if it worked, and then did it with other people before she teaches it. And so if you have access to that level of knowledge, why would you want to figure it out on your own?
This is the way I say it. I say, if you were going to go to Paris, would you charter a plane and get a map? You wouldn't even get a code. Like, would you just charter a plane and get a map and get in the plane and go to Paris? Hell no.
Nobody
You would
would.
go find a pilot, right? You would get
That's right.
somebody else to take you. So why would you try to do anything that you have not done yet? Because if you could do it by yourself, it would already be done. Why would you try to do it by yourself? You go find the person who's already done it in consistency so that they can help you do it, right? That's the rubric of seven-figure earners. We find a system that is working and we work the system. We don't reinvent the wheel. We don't start from scratch. We go find whoever's doing it and we get the shortcut. We get the cheat code.
Because time is far more valuable than money will
Far
ever
more
be.
valuable. Far more valuable for money than money.
All
And those
right.
of you who believe time is money, you got a problem. You need to work on your relationship with money
The
because
relationship
time
is
is not
out of
money.
the relationship
Your
is out of
relationship is out of
alignment.
alignment. Yeah. And you think that they are the same. They are not.
They are not the same. Although
We are
they've
not the same.
tricked you into taking a little bit of money for a whole lot of your time. All right,
Yeah.
Darnyelle, I am an action taker. I am checking out right now. I just got my VIP ticket for March 20th. So I encourage all the listeners to do the same. I always end my episodes with asking the guests to give me the one thing you want the listeners to take away from this episode, because we've covered a lot of ground.
We did.
There's a whole lot of things that are super important, but what's the one thing, if they don't remember anything else, that they should take away and they never hear from you again?
Yeah. It's possible for you to have access to more money than you can give, spend, invest, or save. It's possible.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Darnyelle has been here. She brought fire. We'll see if I got the best interview. I got my fingers crossed.
It was a good interview.
Let's see,
This
she
was
got
good.
good. It was I gotta get to the best. I'll get to the best one day. All right.
Yeah.
To the listeners, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.